Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Australia-New Zealand Testing Board Special Interest Group in Software Testing. For our November event, we've got Clive Bates, who'll be talking to us about TMMi. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to the elders, past, present, and future. Australia-New Zealand Testing Board is a not-for-profit organisation and a member of the International Software Testing Qualifications Board. We aim to support, improve and advance the software testing profession within Australia and New Zealand. We have a number of board members and associates that help us deliver SIGISTs and other information sharing events. And we partner with ISQI for the delivery of the ISTQB certified exams. We have a number of channels that you can reach us through: Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. Tonight we're presenting as a special interest group for you, but we also assist with the ISTQB international working groups, the partnership program, making sure that training providers are accredited to the syllabus standards of ISTQB. We support the development of ISTQB syllabuses, both existing and new. We used to create and run exams, but as I said, sorry, this is a bit outdated. Now they're facilitated through ISQI, and we look after the certification of software testers as well. We're represented all throughout Australia and New Zealand. You can take our examinations in any major city at testing centres, or now with the advent of being locked up at home, we provide exams through Flex, which is the online platform. We have a number of certification paths. Starting with the foundation and then moving on to advanced. Our certified testers have grown exponentially. And at the moment, all of our exams are available through the e-exam channel. A number of accredited training providers, a few of them are listed here, but more are on our website. So please feel free to go to anztb.org to look out who's in your region and the training programs that they may have available for our certifications. We also have a number of partners, we have a number of organizations that have joined our partner program, and they're recognized for, extending the reach of the ANZTB certification, and in some places, supporting the training and rollout of those. Okay, well, I think that might be enough of that one. And what I'd like to do now is I'd just like to introduce Clive Bates, who'll be doing our SIGIST tonight on TMMi, the growth of TMMi. So Clive is a very experienced TMMi Lead assessor working for Planit Testing in the UK. He's been involved with TMMi for about 10 years now, and has completed many assessments globally. Just talking to Clive before, he's been getting up very early in the morning this week to do some of those throughout the Asia Pacific region. So now I'd just like to hand over to Clive, and I hope you all enjoy the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks very much, David. Well, hello everybody, and I hope that my voice is coming over loud and clear to you. Thank you for joining me today. As David said, it's this evening for you, and it's good morning from the UK. It's we're just after 7 a.m. Today, and as David said, yes, it's been some early starts to do assessments this week. But this is really the one of the benefits and the power of these online systems, where really it pulls different countries and time zones together so easily. So again, thank you for joining me, and I really hope that you find the information I'm going to present to you both interesting and helpful. And if you do have any questions, there is the chat where you can post questions, and I'll respond to the questions at the end. If you would prefer just to email me direct afterwards, then I'll put my email up there and be more than happy to talk to you. One of the things that people who know me will realize that is I'm happy to talk anytime about TMMi. So I don't find it boring. So if you do have any questions, please come through to me. So I want to just talk to you today a little bit about the growth of TMMi, where it all came from, what's actually happening at the moment, and also just give you a little insight into the model itself, into the framework, and also the type of services that Planit can offer in terms of the assessments and the training that you can receive. So for myself, yeah, that picture was taken a while ago when I did actually have the beard. I shaved it off, and people actually then said how much younger I look. So that's the reason why it stayed off for the moment. But I'm a principal consultant with Planit Testing, and I've been involved in testing itself now for well over 30 years. And as David said, I'm a TMMi Lead assessor. I'm also a TMMi test process improver, which is part of a new scheme that the TMMi Foundation recently released. And I'm also a trainer for the TMMi Professional and the TMMi Assessor course. I'm chair also of the TMMi Accreditation. And so if you look on the TMMi Foundation website, looking at resources and who we are, then you'll see that I'm part of the management executive looking after that. And I've been in this role now for a few years, and it's very, very rewarding seeing how TMMi is actually growing across the world. I'm also director of accreditation for the UK Testing Board. So I've been involved in the certification of UK ITB since the origins, when it first started with the Information Systems Examination Board, ISEB, which is part of the British Computer Society. So I've been involved in that side of things probably since about 1996, when it all first started. Planit as an organization are registered with the TMMi Foundation. We're an accredited assessment service provider. So we have our accredited assessment method, which is the method we use when we come out to do both the informal and the formal assessments for the clients. We're also a recognized training provider for both the TMMi Professional and the TMMi Assessor courses, and there'll be a little bit more on those later on. And we've also got accredited lead assessors and assessors in the UK and Australia and New Zealand. And I think we're probably about the first organization to actually have accredited assessors and lead assessors in both Australia and New Zealand. So we've got a good spread of experience to cover globally. Simple history of TMMi for you, just to explain where it all came from. And the TMMi Foundation itself started life when it was launched at the ICS test, which is a UK conference back in 2005, when Brian Wells first presented the concepts of TMMi. And the documents that the foundation put together are quite varied and many, and these are all downloadable from the TMMi website, which you can see there is at tmmi.org. And it includes the main reference model, which is now version 1.2. And we've also got the TMMi in the Agile world, which is the version 1.4. And The reason for the two documents is that the reference model was first established, and obviously looking at the time on how testing was being performed against waterfall and V model life cycles. And it could still be applied at that time very much in agile projects, because you use the reference model as a framework or a guide on the sort of things that you should be looking at. And you're looking at things that are fit for purpose given the type of business and also the life cycle in use. So it did work originally very well, even in agile projects, and I used it very successfully in agile projects. But there was a need to try to be a little bit more focused and define how TMI would actually work in agile projects, because there was a little bit of uncertainty out in the marketplace that it was suitable for the agile projects. So work was done to create the separate document, and it's not a huge document, and it's more like an appendix in a way to the main framework, just to say this is how we interpret the TMI in agile projects, and it gives some great guidance on how to use it. So really the two documents can be read in conjunction with each other, and it does explain things, I think, very, very clearly, and gives you a lot of good information on what's expected, the different activities within testing. There's also the document called TMMi, which is the TMMi Assessment Method Application Requirements document. And this is a document which just tells you what is needed for running assessments. So it'll tell you what sort of information, for example, you need in the planning documents, and how actually to score assessments. And then assessment service providers need to have a method, which is how that process is going to be applied within projects. So TMMi is telling you basically just what to do, and the methods that you have out there are telling you how to do the actual assessment. There's also the document which talks about the criteria to become an accredited assessor or a lead assessor. And the document is being updated with some more information shortly to look at how we can use SPICE assessors as well within TMI. But it's a very helpful document just to tell you what is needed in terms of experience and qualifications, and how to apply to become an accredited assessor. And there's a number of other documents out there which I won't run through here because they're quite varied, but things like the fees that we charge, and also some marketing things as well. The TMI itself, the model, has roots in ISTQB, IEEE, CMMI, various testing surveys and industry best practices. And the first framework was actually released back in 2010. So we're looking at about 11 years ago. When we talk about the roots in ISTQB, it's also using the same terminology that we've got for the vocabulary within ISTQB, just to make sure there's a consistency of application and use of terminology across organizations. And then the CMMI, it's got its roots in there because it's following the structure of how CMI assessments are done. So the document itself, the way it's actually led in terms of the process areas, specific goals and specific practices, etc., is all down to how it looks also in CMMI. So anybody with a CMI background or experience, knowledge, will recognize the structure of the TMI framework because it's very, very similar. The framework is also available not only in English, which is where it's all started, but it's also been translated into Chinese, French, Spanish, and Portuguese. So it's out there in the world, being used very, very widely. It's also a totally independent model, so it's free for you to download. All you need to do is go down to the TMI website, go into resources and the documents, and all of the frameworks and all the documentation is there for you to download for free. The nice thing as well is recently the TMMi model was actually identified as the leading test process improvement model by the IEEE Standards Authority. If you want a link on the paper that talks about that, just let me know. But that's given great credibility to the TMMi framework and how it's being used. CMMI, you may well be aware of that, the Capability Maturity Model Integration. And this is a way that organizations can assess how their software engineering is being conducted. And it's a separate independent assessment on their processes. But it's very akin to TMMi. CMMi looks at, I say, the wider software engineering, whereas TMMi looks specifically at the testing activities. So they do complement each other very, very well. And if a company actually has CMMi certification, there's no reason why they can't run to get a TMMi assessment as well. We're looking at different things and looking obviously at the testing in much greater detail. So there are organizations that will do both, but that's fine if you want to do them independently. You can do that as well. So it's just that we use the word complement CMMi. It's not a requirement, but if you've got it, then they can complement each other very, very nicely. So this is how the model actually looks. There are 5 levels of maturity. We start off at level 1, which is the initial. And I can say to you, you know, the fact that you get out of bed, go to work and do some testing, well, congratulations, you're level 1. But there's no certificate I can give you for that. It's basically that you are doing probably ad hoc testing. The work that you're doing, excuse me, is based on good people, and you're doing good work because of those good people. But you're at risk if those people leave, and you don't actually have any repeatable processes, but you do some testing, which is great. As we move up the maturity levels, we've got level 2, which is managed, level 3 is defined, level 4 measured, and level 5 optimization. Now, at level 2, there are 5 process areas we're going to be looking at, which is the test policy and strategy, the planning, how you do monitoring and control, the test design execution, and then the test environment. Now, at level 2, we can assess a project. And the idea is that you will have processes under those process areas, but they may well be different for different projects, but you have processes. When we're looking at level 3, we're looking to see that the processes that you've got are now being institutionalized, and they are actually being rolled out in a common way across the whole of the organization. So we're including now test organization, what the structure of testing looks like, the training program, and how the testing lifecycle integrates in with the development lifecycle, what your approach is to test design, looking at non-functional testing, and then the peer reviews or the review process. Now, this is a staged model. So if you're going for level 3, you have to also satisfy everything at level 2. And as I say, the fact that we're looking now to make sure that all of the processes are being run in a consistent way across the whole of the organization, this would include those activities at level 2 as well. So we're now wanting to make sure that all of the projects are operating with the same processes. And we can look at a mixture of whether they're the more traditional waterfall V model life cycles and agile as well. There are companies that are doing both. So we can look at the projects and see how they're actually working. Now, it's quite often that people actually say, well, why have we got non-functional testing at level 3? Because normally that's done at the same time as functional testing down as part of the test design and execution. And that is true. But that is a testing process. What you're looking at here is actually a testing assessment process. And the approach to non-functional testing is going to be more consistent across the whole of the organization. You're not going to have different ways of doing performance or load or volume testing or any other the non-functional testing in different ways across different projects. You have a consistent way of doing it in the organization. Hence, that is at level 3. So level 2 and 3 are all the daily things you do in your testing activities. And then levels 4 and 5 are more the management support that sit on top of the good testing that you do. So there is a bit of a natural break point for getting up to level 3 and then moving on to 4 and 5. So when we're getting up to level 4, we're looking at the metrics and measurements of testing in the organization. So we're looking, for example, at organizational metrics in terms of test measurement. And we're looking at how we can evaluate the quality of the products or the deliverables that we do. How can we measure the quality of those? So we set some targets and see how we can test out to make sure that they're meeting those targets. And we're also doing advanced reviews, which is a way of incorporating results of the reviews which happen at a lower level, but using the metrics from that to help us prioritize the testing that we're doing alongside the risk elements as well. And then the level 5, the optimization, is where we're into an organization that is consistently self-improving. So we're looking at a focus on defect prevention, and it takes information from the defect logs or the bug logs, whatever you call them, and we start to look at the common defects that arise in the project, and we try to categorize those into certain areas, and then we can analyze those and put in mitigation strategies to prevent them from occurring in future. We've also got test process optimization, which is where we're looking at how we can improve the testing itself and bringing in new technologies. And we're also looking at how we can statistically control the testing moving forward and make our testing more predictable as we go forward. So there's a lot in those levels. That's a very quick high run through. I mean, the TMMi professional course, we go through all of those in great detail on the course, so you get to understand them much better. There's a lot of information on the framework as well. If you want to understand those a bit more, you can download that and dig into those areas a little bit more if you want to. And it gives you examples of information that you might want to include in those documents as well. So for example, in a test policy, it'll give you information, the sorts of things you could expect to see in a test policy. So it's very much a guide to help you. Obviously, getting to level 3 is the chunky work in a way, because you've got the 10 process areas to achieve, and it's very much about how we're doing the testing and working with the people to make sure they're following the processes. And once we've got good processes in front of us, then we can add the level 4 and level 5 activities on top. None of these processes are really what I'd call siloed. So, you know, they're not just in individually. There is a blending of some of these activities together. So when you look at some of the risk elements, for example, that's spread over a few of the different process areas as well. So when you're going up to level 4 and 5, you know, if you've got good foundations below you, then some of the activities needed to get up to level 4 and 5 maybe not too onerous to look at. So that's just a high level run through, but that's the model it looks at. And if you've got any further questions on that, please let me know. What I've also got for you here is just an example about how the framework breaks down the detail that we're looking at. So this is just to give you an example. So if we're looking at level 2, we can see that it's got the 5 process areas of the test policy and strategy, test planning, etc. If we then just take the test policy process area itself and break that down, that's got 3 specific goals, which is establish a test policy, establish a test strategy, and establish test performance indicators. We can then break that down further. So if we take just the first goal, establish the test policy, that is broken down into specific practices, which is where we have to define the test goals of the organization to understand what they are, which then in turn will lead us to defining the test policy. And then we want to get the policy distributed to stakeholders for their buy-in and approval of that document. And then below that, we actually have what's called the sub-practices, which gives more hands-on detail how to achieve the specific practice. So just taking the first one, defining the test goals, we've got these 5 sub-practices which are looked at to study the business needs and objectives, give feedback for clarifying the needs and objectives, define the test goals traceable to business needs and objectives, review them with the stakeholders, and then revisit and revise as appropriate, e.g. on an annual basis. And this is really just to make sure that what we came up with originally are still relevant 12 months, 24 months down the line, or has anything changed in the organization, which means goals have altered, which then needs to be reflected in the test policy. So you can see that we go down into a lot of detail, and there are examples in the framework as well of the type of things that we'd be looking for. So as I say, in terms of what's in a policy or what's in a strategy, there are some examples of things that you might want to consider. So the detail is quite large, hence the document itself is 226 pages long, and so if you do download it, you might want to read it on your screen rather than printing it off, because trying to save a few trees there, but there's a lot of good information in there. So there I've given you just a bit of an insight into what TMMi framework looks like, and I say we go into this in much greater detail when we do the TMMi professional course. As I say, TMMi has been around now for 11 years, actively out there, and it's been a great opportunity to do the first real big public survey about how people are using TMMi, and some of the results of people who've had TMMi assessments and how it's benefiting them. So earlier this year, back in June, there was the survey actually published. It's the first user survey that has been conducted by the foundation, and it gives a good understanding on the benefits of TMMi, why organizations adopted TMMi, and some of the problems they had when applying TMMi. So it's a great read. There's 21 pages of graphs and information to help you understand how organizations have used and benefited from TMMi. And down there you can see a link to the TMMi website where you can download a PDF of that particular document. All the information in there is based on feedback from companies. So it's not information that foundation have put in there. This has all come from customers, and it's in response to a survey. So it's based on their experiences, and what we've done is analysed some of that information. Just for some numbers for you, here are some latest numbers which were done in October. These numbers keep changing, and it's almost out of date as the slide is written, actually, because the numbers just constantly keep going up. But it gives you an indication of the scale of what's actually happening. So at the moment, there's probably about 1,400 certified professionals around the globe, and there's been 106% growth in the Q1 and Q2 this year, and we are seeing continued growth in that area globally. There's also nearly 2,800 members, and anybody can join to become a member of the TMMi Foundation, and I would encourage any of you who are interested to go into the website, the TMMi website, and you can register. It's very, very easy to do, and it's also free, and you'll also get copies of the regular newsletters and be kept up to date with what's actually happening in the TMMi world. We've also got 79 active certified organizations at the moment. And I say this is going up all the time, and all of these organizations can be viewed again on the TMMi website, and you can see the levels of maturity that they've achieved. So you can see the company name. From that, you can obviously work out the industry sector that they're in as well. And it's quite interesting because the bulk of the assessments is certainly at level 3, with level 5 being the next most popular, then level 4, and then there's only one company at the moment on level 2. So levels 3 and 5 are certainly the most popular, but there's a good smattering of organizations at level 4 as well. And you do get organizations, of course, going to say a level 3 and then deciding in a little while later to go up to a higher level, and that doesn't get reflected in the numbers here because it's the same company just moving up to a higher level of certification. But it's all there to be seen. We've also got 34 lead assessors, 66 assessors, and there are 25 test process improvers. So we've got well, again, that number will be going up, but at the time this was written, 125 people involved. The test process improvers are going to be part of the numbers below, because you have to be a lead assessor or assessor in the first place to become a test process improver. But there is information on the website about what that looks like and what that means to have as a certification. Certainly seeing the numbers of certified organizations, lead assessors and assessors climbing rapidly since I got involved with the TMMi Foundation. And it's really encouraging to see the growth coming on board, and it really is globally. You can see on the pie chart, though, the number of TMMi professionals by country. This is based on the exams, and you can see that China is way in the lead there with the number of people who are certified, with the UK and then India. We've also got, there are other countries involved as well. So we've got, I was going to say Malaysia, but Malaysia they're shown separately as 2%. But there's I believe probably places like Vietnam, Saudi Arabia, there's Canada now. So there are a number of other countries getting involved. And of course, in there will also be some of the Australia, New Zealand qualified people as well. We've also got 23 local chapters worldwide. These are local chapters which are affiliated to the ICQB boards, and I'll come on to those in a few moments. There are other local chapters also in progress as well, so that number will again be going up before too long. There are 17 companies that can offer the TMMi assessments globally, of course, which is Planit is one of those. And we've got 7 recognized training providers for doing the TMMi assessor training. and we've got 24 for the TMMi Professional. The assessor training changed recently because there was the introduction of a new syllabus that talks about the scope of coverage of the training course. So it was a way to formalize that particular training as it leads to people becoming accredited assessors. So some of the numbers that we're seeing this year. So this is Q1 to Q3. So we've got the Q4 to add in here, obviously at the end of the year. But you can see that the growth, as it's been standing in terms of the number of assessments and how it's been taking off for the last few years, and also the number of TMMi professional exams. There's big growth coming along there, and we're expecting this to again exceed what happened in 2020 when we get the Q4 results in there. So you can see that the numbers are growing, and you saw on the pie chart the distribution of those numbers across the globe. The local chapters. This is a little graphical representation of where local chapters are currently. And a local chapter is basically a group that is affiliated to the ISTQB board of the country. The only difference at the moment is America, where they formed a separate one. But the idea of the local chapter is to promote TMMi in their region. And the idea is to find organizations that will act as assessment service providers, who will act as training providers, and also find companies that are actually wanting to benefit from having TMMi assessments as well. So the whole idea is to promote the different aspects of TMMi. In countries where it's appropriate, they're also responsible for translating the framework and anything else into their local language. So the Chinese local chapter, for example, have been very active to translate the framework into Chinese, and other boards have been doing likewise. So they take responsibility for that rather than the center of the foundation. The type of assessments that can actually happen. There are two assessments that the TMMi Foundation specifically talk about, which are the informal and formal assessments. Within Planit, we also do the process improvement workshop, and also offer annual appraisals. So the informal assessment is as it suggests, it's a little bit more informal. It's a little bit quicker than a formal assessment, and the objective is really to understand where your organization is in relation to a specific maturity level that you're wanting to achieve. So if you're wanting to have an assessment and say, where are we against a level 3? What processes have we got that are working, and which ones need to be either developed or improved? The informal assessment will give you that sort of feedback. And following on from that, we offer what we call a process improvement workshop, where we go through the areas that we've been identified as that could benefit from improvements, and help you understand what those improvements are, and then what's needed to develop them so that they meet the framework. And these can be to either go forward for a formal assessment later on, or just generally wanting to try to improve the way you're working. And the work can be done by yourselves. It can be done by yourselves with support from an accredited lead assessor, or Planit could do the work for you and help you embed it into your organization. The formal assessments are valid for 3 years. So once you've got certified to a level of maturity, you hold that for 3 years. You can then go for recertification. And the work I was doing just this week is a recertification. So the company had been previously certified, saw the benefits of TMMi, and wanting to carry on for the further 3 years. And all of the formal assessments are done by 2 accredited assessors. Informal assessments can be done with just 1. And a formal assessment has to have one lead assessor and an accredited assessor. You can have others to support you if necessary. It doesn't take that much longer than the informal assessments, but what we're doing is interviewing all the staff to see how the processes are working against the framework. And we're also looking for evidence to support what we've been told at interview. So, for example, if you're producing a test plan and we get good feedback from the interview that a test plan is being done, then we'd be asking for evidence of a completed test plan so we can see what it looks like. We're not looking to make sure the information in there is correct, but just that you've got a test plan that meets the needs of the framework, really. And all those companies that get certified are the ones listed on the Foundation website. And then we have the annual appraisal, which is just a short piece of work which is done on the anniversary of the assessment, just to make sure that things are still working well. So when it comes to a recertification, you've got a really good idea that the processes are continuing and they're working well. In terms of numbers of assessments, the informal assessments don't get listed on the Foundation website, but there are a lot of companies going for informal assessment, but their numbers can't get reported because obviously the Foundation can't release that information for various reasons. So all you will see in the public domain is about the formal assessments. So these are some of the key messages from the survey that was done. And this is looking at why people do TMMi, looking at some of the most important process areas that they were seeking to look at. And these are areas that an organization have deemed to need at the start of a test process improvement activity. So you can see there that coming up with a policy and a strategy, which is setting the goals really for process improvement, is at the highest level. Then when we get into the planning, monitoring, control, test design, execution, we're getting into ways of bringing that testing under control that we've defined on the policy and strategy. And you can see that the bulk of these really are level 2 and level 3. There's a little jump in some areas to level 5, but it just gives you a flavor for the sort of things that organizations were looking for when they undertake assessments. The other graph they have is looking at some of the key benefits to adopting TMMi. Now, benefits are obviously going to depend very much on individual business objectives and what they were looking for and how they're meeting them. But you can see here that looking for enhanced software quality was at the top there. Increased testing productivity. And yeah, I've just spotted the spelling mistake on increased testing productivity, which should be increased. Achieving certification, reducing product risk, and going down. So you can see that there are different benefits that organizations have enjoyed as a result of doing the TMMi assessments. Now, these can actually be broken down and have been broken down in the survey into groups. So looking at what is product quality, test efficiency, compliance, etc. So this graph just gives you, or these little charts just give you an idea that product quality is the greatest benefit that organizations have enjoyed as a result of doing TMMi. Test efficiency is not far behind it. And then we've got the compliance side of things and also the people. So you can see that it's not just a one-trick pony, the TMMi assessment. It's covering a number of different benefits and a couple of areas as well. And I'd say if you want more detail, it's all there in the survey. When we're looking at the types of industries, say the information is freely available on the website, but this graph just breaks down that you can see banking, IT software delivery are the highest ones at the moment. If you include insurance in with banking, then that becomes the highest with 37%. But you can see that you've got other organizations in there, but the informals again are not included. And I know of things like organizations like mining companies and pharmaceuticals that did informal assessments, but they would not fall within these categories of industries because we can't publish that sort of information. So there are other industries as well, but we just can't publish it, which is a bit of a shame, really. But you can see banking and insurance is the highest one, followed by software delivery, a close second. The next slide is quite interesting. This looks at the development life cycles that the organizations that have had TMMi assessments are using. And you can see that the V model or sequential is still the highest life cycle that's used in organizations, with agile increasing, but at 78% and DevOps at 57%. And 69% of organizations are applying multiple life cycles. So this was actually quite an interesting one because it bears out my own practical experience where there are lots of companies still doing the traditional life cycle models as well. So it's not gone, it's there, and it's still actively being used. So we've got lots of interesting information there, and the ways that we can move forward on this, I say, is process improvement work. And I touched on this briefly on one of the earlier slides about how we can Planit can help once you've identified areas that need to be improved, how they can be then either developed or improved. And we can help create the new processes or refine existing ones, and also help get them embedded into the organization. And all this is monitored and supported by lead assessors. So we can either do the work for you, or you can do it with our support. So if that is something which you'd be interested in, then just let us know. Improvement work generally actually follows a structured model as well, and this is covered within the TMMi Professional, and it's all done using the ideal model. It came from CMMI, and it's used to great effect as a process within TMMi as well, and it's got its origins from the deeming approach, which is the plan, the do, the check, and the act. And the idea is that we go through to understand what the change is, and we go through to understand what changes are needed, develop them, and implement them into the organization. And the TMMi bit is down here, where we understand the current state of play. And then there is a process you can go through to bring the different improvements into the organization. For the training available from Planit, the training courses are delivered in the UK, Europe, and internationally as live online courses. And it's really quite interesting when you start using Zoom to deliver the training. The last course I did, for example, I had somebody from China, from some people from Pakistan, New Zealand, and Canada at the same time. So you just can't do that if you're physically having to go to places, but you can pull people in from different parts of the world, time zones permitting, to run this. So there are training courses which are run for Australia and New Zealand. The next one, it's actually run on the 7th to 9th of February next year, the next TMMi professional course. And it's run over 3-part days because I'm delivering it from the UK. So just to help with the time zones for both of us, we do it over 3-part days. If it's just a normal course, it's normally a 2-day course, but it's run over 3-part days and works very, very well. Then the assessor and lead assessor course, again, it's 4-part days. And this is a very practical course where you start to practice doing the interviews, getting the results, analysing them and scoring them and presenting the information back. And both these courses can lead to you becoming an accredited assessor, subject to the other criteria being met that's been documented. So if you want more information on those training courses, you can contact the Planit in Australia, New Zealand, or myself. Happy to help you out and give you more information on those courses. But we've got the one which is going to be running, I say, next one in February. So if you're interested, put the date in your diary. There is also a career path which TMMi have launched, starting off with the TMMi Professional, and this again is available from the foundation website, and this gives you a structure of the qualifications that you can take to become proficient in TMMi. So all that information is available on the website, but you can see that it doesn't stop just at getting TMMi Professional. If you want to become more experienced, and be able to do assessments or lead assessments, and also be part of a TMMi test improver. And I think there's something like about 23 people it is at the moment registered worldwide as a test process improver. And these are people who are not only knowledgeable in TMMi as the theory, but also help organizations do improvements themselves. So I'm about out of time. If you want more information, you've got any questions on TMMi, I'm always happy to talk about TMMi. If you want information about the training courses, curious about assessments, if you even need just a tailor-made and focused presentation for your company about TMMi and the benefits it can offer, happy to do that. Just anything TMMi related, just let me know. Always happy to talk about it. Much to my sons and my wife's disgust, really, because I'm always talking to them about TMMi, which they find not quite so interesting. But that's it. Thank you very much for listening. Please let me know if you do have any questions, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Clive. That was a really great insight into TMMi. Got a few questions on the chat. I think we might have answered some of them, but I suppose just a couple that I'd like to call out.
Okay.
On average, how long does it take to assess an organization for TMMi?
Okay, so it varies because you have to take a few factors into account. You have to understand whether it's a formal or an informal assessment, what level of maturity you're going for, how many life cycles you're using in the organization, and how many locations are involved in the assessment, and also how many projects. What I always do with assessments is I have a series of questions, and I send these out, and I say, if you can answer me those questions, I will be able to give you a good idea on the effort and the cost of doing the assessment. But if you just wanted a very simple ballpark where it's a level 3, one life cycle, one location, etc., you're probably talking around 7 or 8 days to do that work as a rough guide. Okay. But I say it does depend on a number of other factors.
Sure. When you're doing your many assessments, where do the majority of organisations land in the level of maturity? I think you sort of said around 3 or 4, but on
3, 4,
I
or
suppose
5. Yeah.
on the initial assessment, yes, on the initial assessment, yeah.
Yeah. So on the initial assessment, most organizations are looking at level 3, I guess. You get the odd ones who do want to go straight for 4 and 5, which is absolutely fine. But I think most people tend to try to target level 3 initially, just to make sure that their testing processes are in place, because once they're in place, then you can have the management support that sits on top of that good testing. So level 3 is probably the one where most people land initially.
Okay, thank you. Based on your wealth of experience, what are the top 5 most common testing issues you see in an organisation?
Good one. The top 5. Environments have always been a bit of a problem, but they're actually improving an awful lot now when I'm seeing where people are responsible for environments. So they actually have a test environment expert in place. The other one is probably around requirements. Big surprise there, I guess, getting those sorted out. But there's ways to tackle that with reviews. I'm trying to think what other risk is actually quite an interesting one. That there are some companies who still don't split out product and project risks. They tend to merge them into one, and especially when you're doing informals, they're probably not giving them the attention that it deserves, because it's quite an important area. Retrospectives. Well, if you're doing agile, you'll be doing those anyway, but retrospectives is also an area where companies can spend a little bit of time but get a lot of benefit out of retrospectives. So they're probably the main things, I would guess. I would also add that one of the things about TMMi, it's very much about defect prevention. So it's very much a shift left, trying to find those problems early in the life cycle rather than testing them out later. So anything we can do to get things right early on is really a bonus.
Okay, and I think maybe the last one. If an organisation has limited funds in order to make improvements, where would you say they would get the greatest return on investment?
So anything where we can find the problems early on. So make sure we're doing proper reviews, retrospectives, and make sure that we're getting the requirements handled. So any of the activities up front would be really good, but then also having some good metrics to be able to capture the information, report on it, and actually take appropriate actions to bring yourselves back on track again as well. So to me, those are little costs but high return.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Clive. Thank you, everybody who's come along to tonight's SIGIST.
Yeah, thank you for those questions. Been great questions. Thank you.
Yeah, they were great questions, and thank you for posting them to those that did. The presentation will be available on YouTube as a recording. We will get that link out to you, and it will always be available on the ANZTB website as well. I'm having an issue here. Wait a minute. Let us know what you think. You can email myself, David Fuller, at anztb.org, or Ronak, who was on the earlier slide in this pack, and give us some feedback for future presentations, what you liked about this, or even if you just want to know some more about ANZTB. We'd like to hear from you. All right. And always ask for ANZTB. We can guarantee you that it is a genuine ISTQB certification. It's aligned to the syllabus, and it meets the criteria as stipulated by ISTQB. So thank you all again for coming along tonight, and we hope to see you at future SIGISTs. We had another SIGIST this morning too, so that presentation will be available on our website as well. So good evening, Clive. Good evening, everybody, and thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.